Welcome back again to Last Week I Watched. I'm Mark and I watch movies and TV and review them for you to help you decide whether or not they're worth your time. So this week I'd like to talk about Big Bug, The Outsider, The Expanse, specifically Season 6, which was the last in the run at the moment, Those Who Wish Me Dead, Crimson Peak and Seventh Son. Okay, let's talk about them. First up this week was Big Bug. It's a film from 2022 starring Isabella Nanty, Elsa Zilberstein and Francois Leventhal, and it's showing on Netflix. So this movie's about a group of bickering people, and they find themselves stuck together when the robot uprising kicks off and causes their well-intentioned household robots to lock them in for their own safety. This is a comedy sci-fi satire. It's from the creative Jean-Pierre Jeunet. He's known for Amélie, Delicatessen and The City of Lost Children. It's a French film, so you'll need to use subtitles if not fluent. But he's wonderfully creative. He's known for doing sort of fantastical, sort of otherworldly type of things. So in this one, it's 2050. Artificial intelligence and robots are everywhere, and humanity has become soft and lazy. Everything is done for them. They have a gadget to do everything. Machines do even the simplest tasks like bringing food across the room or opening and closing the door. And then when this robot uprising is precipitated by the latest model Yonex androids, the household robots secure the home from the outside threat. They basically determine that outside is too threatening right now and trap them all indoors. So this leaves Alice and her daughter, her ex-husband and his girlfriend, Alice's new suitor and his son, and Alice's next door neighbor trapped inside together. As the family becomes more hysterical, the household robots are studying them to become more human, to look after them better, and the Yonex outside are arrogantly convinced of their own superiority, and they're just taking over everything. They're forcing the humans to comply with their rules, or forcing them into sort of a humiliating TV show where they mock the humans and treat them as if they're circus animals. They put them in these frankly humiliating situations on TV. The humans make the assertion that they aren't obsolete because they are quirky and creative, even though they fight and they're not very helpful to each other. Something that the Yonex can't understand because they're all about efficiency. Humans, of course, make mistakes, and when the robots make mistakes, it becomes clear that they've actually become a lot closer to human than maybe they're aware that they are. I think there is some interesting commentary going on here, especially around obsolescence, as humans are losing their jobs to robots, or AI is doing things cheaper and faster, but without any of the creativity that humans bring to a role. It's certainly an increasingly important issue, and we don't want to be stagnating our development by removing all opportunity to learn and grow in our life. This film has Jeunet's quirky style. There's lots of interesting designs, bright colours, but sort of with a retro flair. I mean, for instance, one of the robots has visible gears and mechanisms and things in them, almost more like a sort of a classical automata. I had to laugh at the robots being confused by a printed copy of the Kama Sutra, and the latest sports car that the boyfriend was showing off was one of those sort of old-looking snail French cars, and even though it flies, it still wasn't cool. It was sort of just old and ugly. Overall, it's an unusual film. It has some very interesting ideas and creativity, and it's worth a look. Check it out. Okay, next up was The Outsider. It's a film from 2018. It stars Jared Leto, Tadanobu Asano and Kappei Shina. Apologies if I've mangled your name. This was showing on Netflix. So this is about a former American soldier, Nick Lowell, played by Jared Leto. He joins the Yakuza in post-war Japan. He becomes embroiled in a gang war between his new adoptive family and a rival Yakuza gang. So this is set in 1954, and Nick forms a friendship with Kiyoshi while they're in prison together. It's never alluded to why he's in prison. Was he a prisoner of war left in the prison? Has he committed a crime after the war? You'll never know because the film never investigates Nick in any kind of detail whatsoever. He's a complete and total mystery. When they get out of prison, Kiyoshi takes Nick back to his Yakuza family, and Nick starts with small jobs and gradually earns their trust until he's finally accepted into the family. When a rival family starts trying to take over their territory, a gang war erupts with consequences that will test Nick's loyalty to his new family. The film is similar to The Last Samurai, but following two Japanese criminal families. It's largely focused on the rivalry between the families. It touches somewhat on Japanese culture and the country after the war. I found the historical Japan interesting, the old cars, the buildings, the mix between the traditional and the newer buildings as Japan rebuilds. The Yakuza culture was interesting with its strong family loyalty and code, and it makes the betrayal even more shocking as it was extremely dishonorable. And, I imagine it would happen, but it seems quite odd in a culture that really prides itself on honor and things like that. It's a slow-moving drama, but the story is still interesting as a period piece. Sadly, there is some missed opportunity, though, to delve into the culture or the characters with greater detail, but it's still worth checking out. I recommend you give it a look. It's an interesting film. It's not super action-packed like you might expect with the Yakuza. There are some action sequences, but I think it's much more, I want to say a character piece, but it really delves more into, I guess, the families than it does the individuals. So anyway, check it out if you're interested. Okay, next up was The Expanse. So this is a series. It's been running since 2015. It's starring Stephen Strait, Dominic Tipper and Wes Chatham, and this was showing on Prime. So currently there are 6 seasons, but there are actually 9 books that it's based on. So I'm hoping that while they're ending on this season, on season 6, I'm really hoping that perhaps they're going to wait a bit till the cast are older and come back to make the remaining 3 books. As in the book series, the story jumps forward about 28 years, I think. So this is the final season at the moment, and I'm not going to go into recapping the entire show, but this season deals with book 6, Babylon's Ashes. Oi! Get out of there. Sorry, my dog is worrying the carpet. Anyway, so this continues the story of the Free Navy led by Marcos Inaros following his crippling attacks on Earth and Mars, and the Rocinante and a crew fight to stop Inaros' attacks and regain control of the Medina station in the Ring Gate. But there's a new threat growing on the other side of the rings. This also adapts Strange Dogs, which is a short story, as a way to introduce Laconia and the future events that will happen there. So they have laid out events for the future books, and of course we still have the overarching plot with the ring builders and the gates lurking. So I really do hope that they complete the story with the remaining last 3 books. So let's hope for a series 7, 8 and 9 in the future. The main difference in this story, though, is the replacement of Alex Kamal after the unfortunate issues arriving with his actor in the previous series. His part seems to have been delegated to Naomi Nagata and later Bobby Draper, which works out fine as Bobby joins the crew later on anyway in the series. So I'm hoping that this isn't the end of the series, though. I really do want to see these remaining 3 books adapted. It's such a great series. I highly recommend you check it out. It's some really, really good science fiction. Although it's a very realistic science fiction. It doesn't push the boundaries too far. It has realistic space travel and space combat and things like that. It's really just some of the more fantastic elements with the gate builders and things like that. But generally, it's some very good, very solid science fiction. I think it really does touch on issues that would face man as we venture out into space. We have to get away from marginalizing groups or taking advantage of groups and treating them poorly so that we can get ahead and profit and things like that, and really start to look after each other. So I think there are some interesting messages and things there for the future that we can take from this. The books are also really good as well. I highly recommend you read them. But yeah, let's hope that they finish the rest of the series, and please do check it out. It's excellent. Okay, next up was Those Who Wish Me Dead. It's a film from 2021 starring Angelina Jolie, Finn Little and Nicholas Hoult, and this was showing on Netflix. So this is about a teenage murder witness. He finds himself pursued by killers in the Montana wilderness with a survival expert tasked with protecting him and a forest fire threatening to consume them all. So this is based on Michael Koyata's 2014 novel, but only very loosely adapted. It does away with the murderous psychopaths from the book and shoehorns in a plot where Connor is on the run from, I guess, their military killers because his father Owen, a forensic accountant, has uncovered some financial irregularities that their superiors don't want getting out. It's a much clunkier story than the book, and I don't really understand why they've changed it. It doesn't really add anything of value. It also eliminates the best thing about the book, which was the psychopathic killers. Now, instead of Connor being on the run from the killers, there's this financial plot with ties into power, and they don't really need to be chasing Connor, as eliminating Owen would have likely eliminated whatever he knew anyway. So they also have to waste quite a lot of time traveling across the country to stay with their friends in the national park, rather than in the book where the child character was already hiding out in the survival camp because he's in witness protection. So it just, overall, the changes in the film make the story a whole lot messier and it's a lot more awkward. We also spend time establishing Hannah, who's hiding out in her fire tower after an on-the-job accident that resulted in some deaths and a lot of guilt. This is quite similar to Cliffhanger, but she doesn't really impact much of the story until later on when she encounters Connor fleeing through the wilderness, and she tries to help him, but for a main character, she's really not that central to the plot. Even when one of the killers is taken out later by a pregnant woman, oddly, from the survival camp, it seemed a bit out of left field, especially to put a pregnant woman in that kind of situation and expect her to respond at her best. I get that she's skilled at survival and things, but it did require some suspension of disbelief, and it was quite unexpected. There's some good action sequences, but probably not as many as you'd expect in a film of this type. The story is just messy. It probably needed a lot more polishing. It's disappointing, really, given the quality of the cast, and surprising that they didn't follow the book more, given that it was quite well received, although the female characters probably needed better writing in the book. The Hannah character in the book isn't very well written at all, and she's a bit disappointing in this also. It's an okay film, but I wouldn't expect too much from it. It's just got sort of too many disparate elements going on that don't make a lot of sense. I think overall you'd be disappointed. Maybe read the book instead. Today we have Crimson Peak. It's from 2015, starring Tom Hiddleston, Jessica Chastain and Mia Wasikowska, and it was showing on Netflix. So in 1901, heiress Edith Cushing, played by Mia Wasikowska, meets Baronet Thomas Sharp, the handsome Tom Hiddleston, when he visits her father seeking investment for his invention. With him is his sister Lucille, and Thomas and Edith court, but Edith's father Carter distrusts him immediately and employs Mr. Holly to investigate the Sharps. He uncovers some disturbing information, and Carter pays off Thomas to make him return to England and leave Edith alone. But not long after, Carter unexpectedly dies, and Thomas marries Edith and takes her back to England with him and Lucille. They return to the Sharps' estate of Allerdale Hall. It's a dilapidated mansion that is slowly sinking into the red clay mine it's sitting atop. Edith is plagued with disturbing nightmares and visions, and starts to uncover the mystery of Crimson Peak and the Sharps. This is very much a traditional ghost story, although as the movie self-reverentially points out, it's a story with a ghost in it, not a ghost story. I like that the spirits in the house aren't necessarily the worst thing in the house. And I'm not going to spoil anything by going any deeper into that. Del Toro was aiming to make something to honour the large-scale horror films such as The Omen, The Exorcist and The Shining. It's got the scale of the period piece, and then the beautifully decrepit Allerdale Hall, which was constructed as a massive full-scale set, complete with 3 actual floors, working fireplaces and the elevator. The house took 7 months to build, and it's an impressive character in itself in the film. The cast do a really great job in this film. Jessica Chastain is particularly terrifying as the cold and calculating Lucille, and Tom Hiddleston does a great job as the conflicted Sharp. I really love this movie. I highly recommend you check it out. It's another one of Del Toro's great genre pieces. He's such a great visionary director, and I'd also suggest Pan's Labyrinth in the Shape of Water. He really is a master of the dark fantasy tale. It's well worth your time if you'd enjoy a classic gothic horror tale. Okay, finally, is Seventh Son. It's from 2014, starring Ben Barnes, Jeff Bridges, Julianne Moore. It's showing on Netflix. So this is about Mother Malkin, a witch queen, and she escapes from a pit she's imprisoned in by monster hunter Gregory. And he then finds he has to recruit a new apprentice to help him, and the apprentices have to be the seventh son of a seventh son to help him defeat her, although that's not really explained why. The film is based on the first book in the Wardstone Chronicles series by Joseph Delaney. There's currently 12 in the series, I think, so there's a fair amount of material that could have been adapted into a franchise of movies. Unfortunately, they only adapt the first book, and part of the problem, I think, is because they only very loosely adapted the book. Taking the characters and then constructing a quite generic fantasy story from elements of it. Situations that would have had time to develop over a few books are condensed into this film, so the whole thing feels like it happens much too quickly. There's really no time to gauge any sort of sense of time or urgency around this. Master Gregory, played by Jeff Bridges, he loses his apprentice Bradley, played by Kit Harington, who's excellent from Game of Thrones, and almost immediately in movie time somehow manages to hunt down another seventh son of a seventh son, Ward, played by Ben Barnes, as apparently that's a requirement to be his apprentice. The movie doesn't seem to mention that the seventh son can access magical powers, making him much more of a sorcerer's apprentice in the books, but apparently that's a key point in the book and not in this. In this, instead, it's just that his mother's a witch and he has a magical amulet that she hands him. This sort of Deus Ex Machina and the thing. He's then got a week to apparently train his apprentice in weapons mastery, demonology, potions, etc. So he's kind of this instant witcher. You get a bit of a montage, and after him screwing up quite a lot, by the time he reaches the final battle, he's suddenly this massively skilled badass who doesn't miss anymore. It all just feels really unearned. I think the movie would have been better as a series, to be honest. It really needed some time to sort of stretch its legs and breathe, especially given the breadth of material that's actually out there. Yeah, like The Witcher, which also has a lot of material, it just really needed time to establish the characters, train him up over a series of adventures, and move him towards fighting a big bad. So I feel they sadly squandered the opportunity on this effort. It's not faithful to the material, so it's not going to please the fans of the books, and it's not a good enough medieval fantasy to really function as its own thing. So also, it's pretty weird to have everyone speak in an American accent too. It's an English book series, and America didn't do medieval, so lose the accents and try to have them speak in a way more appropriate to the setting. These aren't people just hanging out at the mall, and the film has really drained a lot of the colour out of the setting from the book too, which is a shame. Jeff Bridges and Julianne Moore as Mother Malkin really carry the film, although I can't help feeling that Bridges is just reusing his Roy character from Ripped. Everyone else seems largely disinterested by what's going on, and the setting itself is medieval generic as well. It's not fantasy. The effects aren't too bad, although I'm not sure why the witches turn into dragons constantly. You know, a witch and a dragon are two separate things. Maybe it's a callback to Maleficent, I don't know. Overall, it's a shame that it's wasted its source material and potential. It's just an average fantasy film, and unfortunately didn't do well enough to get a series or a sequel to continue the series alongside the books. It's not terrible, really. It's not unwatchable, but it's middling, and overall it's a bit disappointing. I don't think you're missing anything if you don't watch it, but you know, if you're in your mind to enjoy a sort of brain dead sort of quasi fantasy that you can just turn your brain off and not be too engaged with, then by all means check it out. Okay, so those are my suggestions for this week. I hope they're helpful to you. As always, feel free to leave any comments below. Let me know your thoughts, and if you have any other suggestions on things to watch. As always, click on the like and subscribe button and the little bell as well, so that I can notify you when some more reviews come out. And somewhere on screen is my Twitter account now, and if you want to tweet at me or follow along with what I'm watching, feel free. Okay, so stay safe wherever you are. I hope you're all dry and you're not experiencing flooding like we are, and enjoy some films and TV, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye now.